Yeah, in this session, we are going to discuss about the Spring framework. What's a framework? The meaning of framework is we can define as a framework is a ready-made or semi-finished. So the framework application is a semi-finished application or ready-made application. All common features all are together made as one package and it's provided. Then using those features, we can build in the application as our requirement. So the Spring is a lightweight framework because of its FOJO model. Spring framework made J2EE application development a little easier by introducing this FOJO module. And the Spring have uh, much demand because of three reasons. Those are simplicity, testability, and loose coupling. What are those three features? Are these are the three features: simplicity, testability, and loose coupling. What's the simplicity? A Spring framework is simple because this is a POSO and POSI model. So here we'll follow the POSO or POSI model. So it's a very simple. And the testability, actually for writing the Spring application, server is not mandatory. But for other applications such as the servlets, the struts, JSP, we need server. So if you want to test the application, it may need a lot of changes in the source, and each time we must restart the server to view the changes. So which is a little tedious and time taking, but we can overcome this in Spring. For testing Spring application, server is not mandatory. Spring has its own container to run the application. So we no more require the server. So Spring can be used to develop any kind of Java applications. I mean, we can develop the starting from console application to enterprise level application. So the next feature is loose coupling. In Spring, objects are loosely coupled. This is this is the core concept of a Spring framework. We will see this in depth about the loose coupling and how it's uh, differ from the tight coupling. So because of these three features, the Spring has a much demand in market. So the Spring framework has many modules such as Spring Core module, Spring DAO module, it's a Spring JDBC, and Spring ORM module, and Spring AOP module, AOP acronym for Aspect Oriented Programming, and then Spring Web MVC module, Spring Batch module, and Spring Security module have many modules in the Spring framework. So majorly we will discuss the Spring Core module. It's the heart for the Spring and the Spring ORM module and Spring Web MVC module. So this core module is the heart for string. Tight coupling and loose coupling is the heart concept of a core module. So let us try to understand about tight and loose coupling between Java objects string. That is, see, I have created one project, that is dependent PRJ is my project name. So this project has two packages, com.codex and com.slt. The com.codex package have a class, that is first class. The class name is first. So int number, the one variable, and name and salary is my properties of first class. So this class has a method, that is a show method. My show method will will show the values of this number and name and then salary. So I have written one more class in other package, that is second.java class. So my second.java class, in my second.java class, I have created object of first class. So how will you create the object? As you know very well, first first equal to new first. That is a way of creating an object for this first class. So I have created object first. Now I want to call this show method. If I want to call this show method, then how can I call? With object reference, I can call it. So I have created an object for the first class. The object reference for the first class is first. So first dot show. When I call this first dot show, then it will ask for parameters. Here I have created one class, that is first number name salary, and this is my method. Method and, and giving parameters, number, name. Now I want to call this first class from other package. Then for that, I need to create an object for this first class. So how can I create an object for this first class? First, I've created an object for first. And now I want to call this method show method. I want to call this show method. So for calling the show method, use object reference first of show method, and here it is four parameters: number, name, and salary. Number double one double zero, name as the salary. Now when I run this program, it will call the first class show method. So it will go to the first class, the first class show method. Here we have a number, name, and string. So those three values we have passed, and those values we get. The number is 1100. Name is Srini. Salary is. When I call this, actually run as, yeah, my number is 1100. My name is Srini. My salary is 2500. But it's a normal. What's the new thing here? You might have thought of a new thing here. Here there is nothing new. But here, what I do here is this class, first class and second class. The second class is depending on first class. The second class is depending on first class because the first class object creating in second class. So the second class is depending on first class. So it's a tight coupling. How it is tightly coupling? Because in first class, if I change something, I don't want three parameters. I don't want to show salary. I want to show only number and name because salary is one. So if I change something on this class, first class, I must change the code in second class also. Here, this way. So if I change something on the first class, I must change the second class also. So now, so the second class is depending on the first class. So it's a tightly coupled. If you change something on the first class, there is a impact in second class. So this is called a tight coupling. One class is depending on other class. If change something on one class, we have to change another class too. So this is the tightly coupling. We using string core module that is by dependency injection. Inversion of control. IOC. Inversion of control. What we do the inversion of controller? In inversion of controller, instead of the second instead of the second object, creating the object for the first class. The web container, the container, the string container will give the first class object to the second. Now, the second class is the dependent, first class is the dependent. So, the string container injects dependency object to dependent. So that is the beauty of I inversion of control. So the controller is inverse, opposite, the inversion of controller. That is the name itself. So actually, if this is depending on first class, the second class has to create the object for the first class and has to use the first class methods. But in Spring core module, the Spring IOC container will inject the dependency object into dependent. It means that the first class object will inject into the second. So the dependency injection, we can do the dependency injection in two ways, by using constructor, other way is by using setter. I have two types of things, construction injection and setter method. You can do the dependency injection in two ways, construction injection and setter. Then before that, let us see what we require to create a ring. So in order to create our station, is required for dot required dot using. So those jar files are one dot file, jar file, common all these jar file, and required minimum are string or jar and what required is two. So and also this this string string environment start by the Spring environment starts by loading Spring configuration XML file into this source interface object. So we call this loading process as bootstrapping Spring framework. What's a resource here? Resource is an interface and class path resource is an implemented class given by the Spring. Both are given in org.spring framework.co.io. So let us see one project using the Spring. The first project using Spring. Here I have already created a project that is dependent object. The dependent object. So for this, we require the jar files. So I have already added the jar files. All of the jar files I already downloaded and added the jar files. And this in this class, I have created three Java classes employee.java. Proposal, proposal. My employee class has three variables. One is ID, is a integer type, and the name is a string type, and address. We have other property that is address. The type of this address is address. Wow. So I have another class that is address class. In this address class, I have a variables address line one, city, state, country, and pin code. This is the address. So what's my poser class have? My poser class have all setter getter methods for this all property. And then Now, employee has employee number, employee name, and address as well. So, for address variable, for address, I'm using this class as a so employee has ID, name, and address. Address which type? So name is a string type, ID is integer type. Then address is this address type. So this address contain address line, city, state, country, and in. So now I want to use this address class into employee. If I want to use generally previously how we can use, we have to create an object address equal to new object address equal to new address. Then I have to use this method I have to call. That's a previous process. Now here we are we are declaring this class as a variable. This class as variable that is address. That is address. And then and then we are we are creating the setter method for this address. That is address, get address, and set address. We will set the address and we will get the address. So for this giving the values, we require application context.xml. So that is, in this application context.xml, we will map the bean, we'll create the bean, and then we'll provide the values for those properties. So for that, here, bean, I have created one bean. Bean ID is address one. Bean ID is address one. And the class is form.product.string.address. The fully qualified name. The fully qualified name. Form.product, the package name and address. I have created B. And then the properties, the property name is address line one. So the property name, address line one. For this property, we set the value so that one double on the address line one. And the city is Kuala Lumpur. And the state is value I said Selangor. And the pin code I said something. And then and then I have created other bean. These are the POSO classes. For this POSO class, I'm creating one bean in the application context. So here bean ID is given. It's an object. It's an object name. Object name. So this application context is a Spring container. This is a Spring container. It will provide the object. And then a class is form.products.string.employee and and name ID for ID number 1 3 for name Rini for other property address other property address for address what the value I have to pass for address I am passing this object this bean ID. So that is previously we given value because we are providing direct value, but here since it is the sector injection will use ref and ref and it refers the address one this object. Then this object will have these all address line one, city, state. So, so now what's the happens here? If I change something in this class, so now suppose if I remove this pin code, it will not impact on this employee. It will not impact on this employee. If I remove the pin code here, just I simply change in here in XML. But we no need to change the employee.java class. To change something on address class, we no need to change anything in employee class. There is no much dependency between these two classes. Then I have another class test is test.java. Yeah, I have a class that is class path class path. So first, this has to read the application context.xml. So the application context.xml will read by this class path resource. This class path resource will, will return the resource object. Return the resource object. So it will load application context.xml will load and it will return a resource object. Now we need to get the bean. We need to get the bean. So for getting the bean, we have a class that is XML bean factory class. So for this XML bean factory class, we have to pass the resource. So actually, the loaded resource is available in this resource object. We need object. The actual object. So the even employee object. For the employee object, what is our object? ID. Is the bean ID. So this is the object. This is the employee class object. So using this employee class object, I can call all the properties. Those are ID, name, address, everything I can call using this bean ID. So that we are doing here. So I'm getting the bean using the factory. So factory dot get bean even, get bean even, and it is returning the employee dot employee dot. Now I'm calling even is a object, employee object. So even dot show. Show is the method in employee class. This method I'm calling. I'm calling this method. So in this method, it is printing the employee ID, employee name, and address. The address is the address is, so if you want to use this address, we must create an object for this address class. So have we created anywhere the object for this address class? No, we did not create object anywhere here. Just we have used this address class as a variable, and we created the setter and getter. So using this setter method, we are injecting the values from this application context that set. So for injecting the setter value here, we are injecting for this address, we are injecting this. It is the address object. The address object, this class object. For this address class, what is the object here? So com.product string that address one was the name, address one is the object. So this address one object is injecting into employee object even. So that for this property, we are giving property name is address and reference. It will refer the address one, refer this one. So we are injecting this object into employee or employee through setter injection. Through setter injection. So for injecting, we have to use that is ref. 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 It will refer this. So this object will have a address line 133 Bhutan, and city is Kuala Lumpur, state is Selangor, and pin code is 1. So we have first this one has to load. As we have created, this one has to load. If this XML has to load, how we can load this XML? We can load that XML using class path using class path resource. So this class path resource class will load the application context that XML and it will return a resource object. Using this resource object, we can create the bean factory, XML factory. So from this XML bean factory, we can get the bean ID, can get the bean ID. You get bean method. This object has a get bean method. Get bean of what is the bean? Is given the bean ID is given. Now take given. Then it is the given. The type is employee type. Now we can call the method we are calling. So who is giving the object? Have we created an object? No, we did not create an object. Who is giving the object? String container. So this class path resource is giving the object. We did not create object anywhere. So how will we create an object? So have we used anywhere employee equal to new employee or address equal to new address? Nowhere. Nowhere we use. Just we bean ID and here also one bean ID. Then who is giving the object for this employee and address is string container. This application context is giving. It has given the employee object. Now let us run this. We'll check. Click run as employee ID is 123. Employee name is Srini and address is 133 Pushan, Kuala Lumpur, Salah. Yes. That's the null value. address, city, state, and in here, need state, I didn't do that. And this is the object of property name is, and country name is, okay. Now let us run this again. And employee ID is 123, employee name is Srini, and address is 133 Puchang, Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, Malaysia, and pin code is. So if you change something here in address, so for example, I will remove this pin code. I remove this pin code. If I remove this pin code, then I need to remove this vector. Now change something on address. Now change something on address. Is it any impact on employee? No, there's a nothing, because if you change something on address, it doesn't impact an employee, because are we are not creating the address object into employee. The Spring container is injecting, so it doesn't impact on employee. So you run this, run as problem is here there is no property, but still we are giving this